Welcome, ladies and gents, to Basics Part 18 on our lounge. I'm your host. I will be continuing from where we left off yesterday with just a brief reminder to everybody. If you are joining me and you're sitting down, you're starting to draw as well. Just 3 things to keep in mind. Draw lightly, sketch lightly, don't give your pencil a death grip, and keep distance from the tip of the pencil. So with that said, and that reminder said, let's jump into where we left off yesterday. This is the arm. And actually, just to give you a better idea, we're pretty much done with the first half of drawing basics. We talked about like the figure, we talked about using the head as the unit of measurement, and pretty much everything prior to this episode was just a brief overview of everything to come. So now that we had like the overview of all the different chapters that we're going to go through, we're going to go into details. We're going to go into studying the arm, we're going to go into studying the leg. Excuse me. We're going to go into studying the head and just kind of divide the lessons now into specifics. I feel like it'll help focus more, zone in more on different parts of the body. So yeah, with that said, let's get it back to where we left off yesterday. So some people might be like, well, why do I have to read these terms? These very clinical medical terms. Like what's the benefit of that? That just seems to be more of like knowledge battle in a sense. When people argue with each other and they're like, I know where the deltoids are and this bicep and so on and so forth. But really what it does serve is their labels. You can't put acronyms on it. You can't just put like D for deltoids, because there's another part of the figure that has D as the first letter, so it's just going to be confusing after a while for yourself and anybody else who you're trying to explain or trying to demonstrate to. So you kind of have to go along with these terms just to decipher them from each other, and you'll see how it becomes useful when you're trying to draw the specific parts of the body. One of the most beneficial ways is that you'll be able to add more detail to your drawings because you understand where the muscles are in relation to each other. So if you know where the bicep is, you know where the tricep is, you know where the other muscles are, so you can make the right line. And I just wanted to show you a quick demonstration of that, and this is a perfect example right here. As you can see, it's beautiful work, great understanding of anatomy. John Buscema is excellent at that. But just pay attention to the kind of lines that he makes. And it makes sense because he understands the anatomy. He makes this line here, and to the viewer, it makes sense because we just understand anatomy in more of like a subconscious kind of way. We look at somebody and we could see that there's a little bit something off about their anatomy, like their eyes are a little too close together or far apart, or the width of their body, the arms, and so on and so forth. We just kind of instantly recognize it subconsciously without having much of a dialogue in our head. So the same thing goes here. You might not be an artist, but when you look at it, you're like, that looks anatomically sound. That makes sense. This is where the chest is. So in a sense, they're creating this illusion through lines, which we recognize, and we're like, okay, that's the figure, that's the bicep, that's the arm. It's not just some weird squiggly line. These are specific muscles that we see on bodybuilders, on action heroes, so on and so forth. So because he understands how the muscles work with each other, because he understands, okay, when an arm twists, this muscle starts to show more, just because of the nature of physics with these muscle groups being next to each other. And when he makes this shadow there, it makes sense to everything else. He didn't draw it further down. He didn't draw it closer to the elbow, because once he does that, it breaks the fourth wall. And by fourth wall, I mean that illusion between the art and the viewer. You know, the viewer is into what's going on because because it's so well done. Whether it's acting, whether it's drawing, it's so well done that the viewer is immersed in the work, and we're immersed in the panel as if though they're there with whatever is going on. So, you know, he doesn't break that fourth wall because he understands all these things. So this is kind of why this helps. You know, you don't want to do it because just for no reason. I'm learning these medical terms. I'm never going to draw these muscles, so on and so forth. I'm never going to actually draw them on the arm. But when you do add little details, little shadows, as you could see, he's not drawing every single ligament. He's not drawing every single line to show each muscle. He's just showing suggestions of where they are with the shadows, you know, with certain lines. And that makes the drawing look even better. It makes it look beautiful, very skillful. So, you know, you might not be drawing this line and this line and this line, but you could make a little line, or, you know, as they're using feathering or some sort of shading to indicate that that's where the muscle is. And that could be like a style thing as well. You might show this muscle, but not this part of the muscle. You might show this part of the muscle, but not this part. You know, it just kind of play around with it. But you have to understand the muscle groups in order for it to look right. You have to understand, you know, how they react to each other depending on the position that they're in. So that's what's really important about the labels, because as we're going to go through these examples, and as I'm going to be drawing the arm in different position, you will see how these labels end up actually being beneficial. Then you'll understand, like, oh, okay, it's this muscle that is twisting because of this muscle getting in the way, you know, and now it's actually showing more, you know, it's gonna protrude more out. So yeah, you know, it's a common misconception. Some people are like, oh, this is too technical, this is almost medical and stuff, but that's just not the point. It's not to just show off how well they understand the anatomy, or how you know, how much they've invested in something that isn't really going to be useful. It's, on the contrary, it ends up being helpful guides. So we got the deltoids, we got the biceps, we got the I'm still learning these terms myself. Pronator teres, let's just say, and then we got the supinator longus. The supinator longus is right here. And really, it's going to be a lot of the deltoids, the biceps, and the supinator longus that are going to play a role in some of these examples, and you're going to see how they actually form on the arm when it's twisting. So this right here is the front view. I'm going to draw the back view, keeping it loose, keeping it light, using cylinder shapes to just give myself something to work within. And notice how the bicep is protruding further out. This is something I mentioned yesterday as well. It's like sometimes people draw the muscles and they'll draw a giant bicep, and then the deltoid is just really shrunk. And granted, there are some bodybuilders who end up looking that way, you know, whether they just how they're anatomically built, or because they just trained one muscle group more than the other. Like they just trained the bicep and didn't train the deltoids at all. So their deltoids are really shrunk, but their biceps are humongous. But yeah, this just aesthetically looks pleasing. All the muscles are proportionate to each other. They've all been exercised equally. So this is what the result of that is. I'm gonna finish drawing the hand first before I jump into doing the detail. I'm just using simple shapes right now, just so that I can establish parameters to work with it. Don't want to start with the pinky, and then by the time I get to the thumb, it's like way out here, and it's huge in comparison to the arm. So this is the back view. So once I sketch this out, then I'm going to give you guys better understanding in comparison, like just to give you an idea of like when the back view is there, where are these muscle groups? And again, this is just building. So I'm just building these out, these diagrams out, so that once we start twisting, and once we start changing the position of the hand, the position of the arm, then you'll know, okay, when this detail comes out, like what is it exactly, and why is it important for it to be exactly at this location on the arm? And then we'll start pointing him out and being like, it's this muscle, it's that muscle, so on and so forth. So this is just an introduction to that, some basis for us to work with and to be able to just explain these different parts And even though this might be intimidating or technical, it's still a great opportunity just to practice hand-eye coordination, attention to detail. Like, the more you nail it, and again, the benefits of anatomy is that if you fudge it, it's going to be obvious. It's going to look weird. So drawing off of this also ensures that your hand-eye coordination is going to get better, because you need to draw them as they are. Otherwise, it's just not going to look right. And it's going to require for you to focus more to do that. And these are great challenges, because I feel like if you are not a little bit perplexed, right? And you're like, oh, I don't understand this. I'm not understanding where the muscle groups are, or my eye can't really follow these things. If you're not doing that, you're in the comfort zone. You're just staying in a comfort zone. You're like staying in a place where you do see everything as you usually do. And that's stagnating you, because you're just like, oh, I don't like this because it's challenging. It's putting me in a position where I don't know what's going on, really. So I'm just going to retreat. And then you never go through the journey of learning all these things and understanding them better, and making the connection when you see these details in other drawings. And part of getting better is not just visually, not just physically. Some people think of it as like a subconscious kind of process where you just sit down and subconsciously your mind just picks things up and you don't even have to do any thinking, and boom, you got this like beautiful anatomy. Again, it's that desire, or that damaging kind of idea that everybody should be like a prodigy when it comes to this kind of process, when it comes to like art in general, to be honest. They're like, oh, if you're not that, then it's worthless, it's waste of time, and all that other toxic nonsense that people are putting out. No, it's just a matter of you trying to focus more and having the determination to sit down and get yourself past these challenges. Take time with it. Be slower if you have to. The point of it isn't to be speedy, isn't to be a prodigy, isn't to be like this masterful illustrator from the get-go. It's to learn to draw. It's to learn to get better. Even people who are incredibly good, the ones who get better are the ones who continuously try to learn, try to improve, and take themselves out of the comfort zone to do it. So that's really what you want to do. You want to challenge yourself. You don't want to be stuck in comfort zones all the time, drawing the same kind of stuff. It's okay if you do, as long as you're drawing, as long as you're like creating stuff and expressing yourself, that's great. But if you really want to take it to the next level, if you want to level up, let's just say, that's an excellent way to do it. Take yourself out of that comfort zone, sit down and do these challenging, intimidating illustrations, and keep coming back to them. It might not turn out great. It might be messy, or it might look bad in comparison, but that's just part of the learning process. You didn't learn the alphabet and instantly start reading the most complicated books, right? You took time, you figured it out, you had to practice it several times, and then little by little, you challenged yourself to read more complex material, look up words. It was a process. It was something that didn't happen overnight. And it wasn't something that happened in 2 to 3 days. And depending on how much time you put into it, right? Depending on how many times you read during the day, and whether you just continuously make that effort, will determine how quickly you'll get better at it. It's nothing else. It's nothing magical. It's not like one day, boom, you're just an amazing literary artist and you could read and write pretty much anything you feel like. It's all a process. So this is no different. That illusion is just created by people who've been broken, people who are toxic, people who've been told or taught that by their generation, parents or parents of that generation, or parents who failed pursuing it and now they're just like trying to brainwash their kids. Because if the kid succeeds, it's going to make them feel even worse about themselves, and they'd rather not have that, right? Some parents just do that subconsciously. They don't even realize like they're damaging the perspective of their kids by saying those things, when really they're just talking about themselves. Like, I failed, I didn't push myself hard enough to achieve those things, or I just wasn't good at it. So if I convince you that that's the case, then I can feel better about it myself for not actually pursuing it and getting better and practicing it and pushing through the boundaries or pushing through limits and stuff. Like, it's really what it comes down to. I remember when I was teaching, there was a parent who came in to pick up their kid, and this kid was very timid. He was kind of shy, and I helped him create the project that he wanted to make, and it was something to do with a mouse living in a house, and he created the entire interior. He made like the box. He created the mouse. He created all these different little areas for it to be in, and then he talked about it, and when his parent came in, he was just like really condescending, like arrogant prick. It was just like, is he any good? Like right in front of the kid too, like the kid's standing there, and you could tell the kid's really into it. He really likes the process, but instantly the kid shrinks, right? Instantly he shrinks. He's just standing there, and his parent has this like smug look on his face about how like right he is that this kid shouldn't be focusing on art. He's like what, like 8, maybe 9 year old. Again, these parents, if you're not a prodigy, you're wasting your time kind of attitude. And it clicked in my head. I'm like, this is why he's drawing a mouse, because his parents just make him feel like it, or his parent makes him feel really small. He's just putting him down, making him feel like he's not good enough or whatever. And at 8 years old, this is like kids who haven't really developed that ability to like stand up for themselves, having self-esteem, and they heavily depend on their parents for it. So I was just like, I took him aside and I was like, look, he's doing good, and he really does deserve to come to this class. He's doing, I did it in an earshot of the kid, hoping that he can hear it as well. But I did give the parent a dirty look. Didn't like the guy. Just thought he was such a scumbag to do that to his own kid in public, to a stranger too. Like, I'm a teacher, but still. You should be considering your kids' feelings over a stranger's opinion at the moment. It's just a total asshole. But it's just an example, and that's like one of the many instances of the same sort of behavior coming from parents, and how arrogant they are, just like their kid is like some sort of tool for their ego boosting. Like, I have a prodigy kid or I don't, you know. It's like, don't have kids, man. You're terrible person to do that. And they're not trophies. They're not a testament to you and how you are. It's just such a terrible reason to have kids. It was just frustrating, to be honest, like seeing how parents are with their kids. And I worked for like nonprofits, and I worked for underprivileged schools. So you would see just terrible ways that parents would treat their kids. Like, some kids would come in and they're super dirty. Like, they're wearing the same clothes. They're literally dirty. Like, you could see it on their face. Like, nothing has been done to take care of them. And these are like 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, like really young kids. You could tell their parents just don't care, and they don't want to do anything to make their lives better, to make them feel cared for, and all that is terrible. It's heartbreaking, to be honest. It's frustrating to see that over and over again. But yeah, it's just a testament to it, like how it really doesn't have anything to do with it. Shouldn't be. Art isn't about that. It is a lot to do with self-expression. You know, the kid felt good doing it. He was talking about it. He was excited. It livened him up. Prior to that, it was very different. So it's really healthy to have that, and it's very healthy to encourage it as well, especially if you're a parent. Don't use your kids as trophies or ego boosting things. It's like so objectifying. Trying to see. I'm just kind of interested, to be honest, like how these muscles really do. Like, looking at it, you could see like, oh, that's why everything kind of moves in unison with each other. But I'm not going to go into too much detail there. I just wanted to point out these muscles here. So this muscle right here is extensor carpi radialis. I mean, they could have come up with easier terms for it, I think, but I don't know. There must be a good reason for it. And then we got the tricep right here. And more of the deltoids here. So there's two groups of the deltoids. There's one towards the back, which is something that you would see right about here. And then there's one that's a little bit towards like the middle. So 2 areas for the triceps. Now this one is important as well. And you're going to see how that really changes. Or why you would see a certain detail pop up when the skin is over these muscles. So we got the front view, we got the back view. Now we're going to do the side view. Just to highlight more. Differentiate the labels from each other. Gonna do side view. I'm wondering if maybe it's better to move it a little bit more. Oh, and all those, just to add to it, all those kids who were troublemakers and all that, they were the ones that were just like not well taken care of at home. And you could tell that they just like the attention because they're not getting it at home at all. You know, so they just act out to try to get it. And I'm sure it's a mix of everything. It's the fact that their house environment is really toxic and they're learning those behaviors and then taking out that frustration in class. And their parents not teaching them any boundaries or anything like that. So it's like, no wonder, you know, there are kids who grow up to be terrible adults. Just shows how important it is to make sure that you're a good parent. Otherwise, you're the reason why there are a lot of problems in the world. You're just like a terrible parent and you raise terrible human beings. Granted, there are people who grow up and really use their brain and start to see, or they're influenced by better examples, and they just start to see how those behaviors are, and they change as people because of them. But not everybody is able to do that, or is in a position or has the opportunity to do it. Kind of want to give myself as much room here because I'm going to be pointing out muscles and I don't want it to be like way off the page. think it has to be more normalized that having kids is not the most important thing. Because people out there are just not into it. You know, they've developed themselves in ways where they're just not fit for it. They don't like it. They don't like kids. They don't like the lifestyle or whatever. But because every parent pushes their kid to have one, they end up having them, and then they just mistreat them, and they don't raise them right, or they don't care. You know, and then you have a lot of people who are just like incredibly problematic, mentally damaged, drug abusing, alcoholics, and that whole thing because they've just had terrible upbringings. Because their parents were told that you have to have kids. And they're just like, I don't want to have kids. But that's just what you do, you know? So I think if it's more normalized that, no, that's not really necessary, then less people will put themselves in position of doing something that they end up really not liking being a parent. And the only reason why they are is because it's just what you do, you know. That's what my parents told me to do. That's have kids because you really like the person that you're with and you guys make a great team. And you like life, not because I need a trophy, I need an accomplishment checked off on my list. You know, don't do it for self-centered reasons. Do it because you actually want to have the kid. And that you like studied and understood what the responsibilities are, what it's like having a kid. Not because, whoops, guess we're gonna have a kid now. I think it's that time. All those terrible reasons. It's another reason why I do support the idea of abortion. Because if you accidentally have it, accidentally you're pregnant, you should not be having that kid. You know, you're not financially fit, you're not psychologically fit. You could be a drug addict and you accidentally had a kid or accidentally impregnated somebody, and now you're just supposed to, you know. And that's just creating really problematic people, especially with like, if you're a drug addict or an alcoholic and you have a kid, they're bound to have like actual medical conditions because of this negligence of your body and during pregnancy and all that other stuff. Or say you have like an abusing family member who ends up getting you impregnated. That's crazy. You should totally be able to abort. But those people who are against, they don't care. They're just crazy people who just like to do things in spite. That's pretty much it. There's no moral ground that they go off of. They just pretend like they are and contradict things all the time. Insane people. Greedy, mentally damaged people who just want more wage slaves. More soldiers. They're not interested in solving problems. They're not interested in morality. They just pretend to. So that people aren't going to be like, whoa, we got crazies running around doing all sorts of insane stuff in our economy. Should we? Should we let them? Like, why are they even part of the legislative process? They're insane. But if they say, oh, we're we're godly people. We believe in religion. Everybody's like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's okay. It's like, no, it's not. Just because somebody calls himself a chef doesn't make them one. They could call themselves religious all they want, and just because they say so doesn't make them that. This is something I was talking about yesterday as well. It's like the difference between a crazy person and the same person is how aligned is their logic, reason, and morality. Like, how consistent is it with themselves, with others? And that's just those are the biggest differences. It's like those movies. I don't know if you guys ever seen Seven. It's a great movie. That's just an example of some people who are psychopaths, and the reason why they do certain things is always about like this grandiose delusion about themselves, where they're criticizing people's actions, but meanwhile they end up like torturing, mutilating, doing all this insane stuff to people. So they're talking about morality while just doing insane things to people because those people don't do as this person is expecting them to. Like, that's crazy. That's being a psychopath. You know, if you watch that movie, you'll see it is an adult film, so if you're underage, I don't encourage it. Wait until you're older. But for those who are adults who have not seen the movie, I highly encourage Seven. It's a great movie, great director, great story and acting. But yeah, that's really like the difference between insane and an insane person is their ability to logic, reason, and morality is consistent with others and themselves, not just others. Imagine if everybody went around and like punishing people when it didn't line up with their thoughts and points of views. Like, how insane the world would be. That's exactly the point. It's crazy to behave that way. Can't go around playing judge and executioner. It is not your place. And rather than doing that, actually come up with ways that will help solve these problems. Healthy, progressive ways. Do we have 1, 2, 3. And then we got this muscle right here. It's slightly confusing, I'll be honest. There's like and this is what I was talking about, it being challenging, is because sometimes it's hard to like follow all these lines and find their origin and as well as their destination. Unfortunately, the stream is going to end, but I am excited for the next stream. As I was advertising on my social media posts, there's going to be an exciting new intro today for the Drawing Comics stream, so I'm pretty stoked to start it, actually, to introduce you guys to this. So make sure you stick around. I mean, I originally did draw it right. Just shifting some things. Oh, and that movie, Seven, is just an example of what pretty much every psycho, mass murderer, killers, that they all had this self-aggrandizing delusion of grandeur, of how great they are, while just completely being detached from any sort of compassion, understanding, or caring, and playing judge and executioner with people while completely contradicting themselves on all the things that they judge about. Again, just examples of how logic, reason, and morality is not consistent. It only applies to others, not themselves. They don't check themselves at all, and they just go out on the spree of judgment and punishment because they're just so great. That movie demonstrates it, and there are a bunch of movies out there that just kind of talk about that same idea. That's the commonality between all of them. Crazy people. Alright, ladies and gents, I will have to cut this stream for now. Gonna get ready for the next stream, which, like I mentioned, it's gonna be pretty exciting. So make sure you stick around tomorrow. I'll be back and I'll talk more about these features. And, you know, since we already have the drawing down, we can discuss more about, like, how all these muscles affect each other depending on the position of the arm. I'm going to do one more example. I'm hoping I could squeeze this in. This is the problem with small pages, but maybe I could, like, squeeze it in here. because it's not the full arm, it's just going to be the forearm. So just as an example of like how the muscles that I'm going to be labeling are going to play with each other. Or I'll just open it up and do it here. We'll see. Okay guys, stick around. I'm going to be right back for the drawing comic stream.